Non-native speech differs from native speech in various ways, including different pausing patterns, such as where, how often, and how long speakers pause between words. There are two types of pauses, filled and unfilled. Unfilled pauses are silent. During filled pauses, speakers make a sound. Different languages use different sounds for filled pauses. This is described as phonetic quality. English speakers often use to hesitate, while Spanish speakers often use a vowel similar to the vowel in the English word bet to hesitate. Because different languages use different sounds to hesitate, non-native speakers do not always use the same hesitation sound that native speakers use. Rather, non-native speakers frequently use the hesitation sound from their native language while speaking their L2. The hesitation sound that native speakers use is considered native. A hesitation sound not used by native speakers is considered non-native. Production studies show that proficiency and speech community influence whether second language speakers produce native or non-native hesitation sounds. However, no study has investigated the perceptual consequences of using native versus non-native hesitation sounds. This study asks, how does using native versus non-native hesitation sounds impact listener judgments about whether speakers have an accent and how well they speak English? In other words, how does the sound that speakers use to hesitate affect judgments about accentedness and fluency? To answer these questions, 4 speech perception experiments were conducted. Stimuli for these experiments were drawn from the linguistic corpus all-star. Participants listened to spontaneous English speech from 8 men who spoke Spanish natively and English as a second language. 40 sentences were stimuli that contained a silent pause, Spanish-filled pause, or an English-filled pause. These 40 stimuli sentences were created from sentences with naturally occurring filled pauses. In 2 of the 4 experiments, 12 sentences that were filler sentences and did not contain pauses were also used. 2 of the 4 experiments conducted utilized a Likert scale rating task, where participants listened to sentences with English, Spanish, and silent pauses and rated how accented or fluent the speech sounded on a scale of 1 to 9. The other 2 experiments utilized a forced choice task. In these experiments, participants listened to 2 sentences that were identical, except that they contained different types of pauses. Participants heard sentence pairs that had English and Spanish hesitation sounds, a Spanish hesitation sound and a silent pause, and an English hesitation sound and a silent pause. Results of the Likert rating experiments show that the phonetic quality of the hesitation sound did not impact listener judgments about accentedness or fluency. Additionally, whether the pause listeners heard was filled or unfilled did not affect listener fluency or accent ratings. However, in the forced choice experiments, the phonetic quality of the hesitation sound did impact listener judgments about accent and fluency. Compared to native hesitation sounds, non-native hesitation sounds were judged as less fluent and more accented. Additionally, compared to silent pauses, non-native or Spanish hesitation sounds were deemed less fluent and more accented. These results show that the sound speakers use to hesitate doesn't impact listener opinions about whether a speaker has an accent or how well they speak the language, unless listeners pay attention to what sound the speaker uses to pause. These results indicate that in situations where non-native speech is scrutinized, using non-native hesitation sounds would lead to negative judgments about accentedness and fluency, which indicates that we need to work on reducing stigma around non-native pauses. But as a more surmountable goal, let's start with making you feel more comfortable pausing when you're speaking your second language. Practicing speaking your L2 is one of the best ways to improve your skills, and you're more likely to pause when you're speaking your second language. This study indicates that in most situations in daily life, listeners are not judging you for using non-native hesitation sounds. So when you're practicing your second language, hesitate however it feels natural to you. And ah and eh, like no one's paying attention to how you're pausing, because they probably aren't.